approach, go 6316, 8.8 for 6,000.
Got 6316, NorCal approach, gonna maintain 3,000, I'm 1 for the right.
3,000, go 6316.
Redwood 811, gonna maintain 4,000, airport's open to Fox 1.
We take you higher and higher and higher. You feel it over and over again. We take you higher and higher and higher. You feel it over and over again.
6 Roman Carefly runway heading runway 5. Let's take off.
Check! Hey!
And we are ready for takeoff. Sit back, relax. It's time to travel with Cosmic Passport. Spaced Out Weekend presents Elizabeth Anglin's Cosmic Passport. A 1-hour warm-up of news, stories, thoughts, and ideas to captivate your mind. You can follow us at spacedoutradio.com.
Now 20 years have passed us by, and we look back and count the time, burning like the summer sun when the world was young. Silently staring from the ground, and 7 trumpets wait to sound.
And now, here's Our Lady of Flight, Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin.
Hello, welcome everyone. We're here on Spaced Out Radio Weekend with your host before the host, Elizabeth Anglin. And tonight we're going to be having a great show with James Tyson and David McCready starting in about 1 hour, all talking about astral projection, how to do it, why to do it, where to do it, when to do it. You know, basically, that you too can do it. Astral projection, that is, with David McCready, in about 1 hour with James Tyson. This is Elizabeth Anglin. I am kicking off the show tonight with just sort of a brief rundown overview of astral projection. Because, you know, frankly, it's not my favorite thing. And I had a bad experience with it, but I do it. I've been told that I do it. People have seen me in the astral realm. I know sometimes I have memories of going on astral journeys. But the first time that I tried it was a bad time. It was right at the beginning of the first Iraq War. And it was right at the time that I was in the middle of my research with John Mack about alien abductions. And I was thinking that if I got good at astral projection, maybe I could figure out a way not to be an abductee. So I read a book and I started practicing astral projection. And I knew what to expect. And the first time I was successful, it didn't take me that long, but the first time I was successful, I was wholly unsuccessful because I still had a very reactive mind. So what happened with me is I did the whole little pre-meditation and the very deep relaxation, and I started to feel as if a freight train was trying to run through my body, and I heard a sound like a freight train, and there was this really deep shaking me, and all of a sudden I was shaken so much my astral or etheric body popped out of my body and floated up above my body, and I turned around and looked at my body, and then I looked at the room that I was in. I had all the lights on bright because I figured, you know, if I'm in the astral, I want to see what's going on. And then I proceeded to float up to the ceiling and start to bump my head on the ceiling of my room, which was a basement apartment room. And then my head started to float through the boards of the ceiling, and and my eyes would go right to the level of sort of the ceiling, in between the ceiling and the floor above, which is really not that interesting. And then, as I sort of willed myself back down into my room, I couldn't figure out how to get back in my body. And I had this moment of panic where I didn't know that I was going to be able to get back into my body. I was conscious during all of this. I remembered all of this. I was completely conscious. And there I am, sort of bouncing my head up against the ceiling going, I can't get back in my body. I can't get back in my body. I can't get back in my body. And then a few moments later, I imagined, or something happened where I imagined this dark shadow in the corner of my room. Oh no, if I can't get back in my body, something else might get in it. Oh no, if I can't get back in my body, something else might get in it. Oh look, there's a shadow. So I spent a little bit of time in a complete freak out mode, completely conscious, worrying about the shadow that I perceived in my room that was going to try to get in my body when I couldn't figure out how to get back in it. Finally, as I got more and more frightened of this perceived shadow, I said, gosh darn it, I'm getting back in my body effing now. And kerploop, I, just went sucked right back into my body. And there I was, breathing, really hyperventilating because I was so scared from the whole experience that I said, I don't know why people like this. I just floated around the room and then I couldn't get back in my body. I don't know why anybody would want to do this. But apparently not everyone is as silly or, unable to get out of the room or back into their body as I was the first time I consciously tried astral projection. Astral projection is not something that is scientifically proven. If you're listening to the show and you want some scientific proof, just dump your science hat at the door. It hasn't happened yet, or it hasn't happened to the satisfaction of skeptics yet. And not many things do in our neck of the paranormal woods. So, but astral projection has been around in many forms for a long period of time. Emanuel Swedenborg, a great writer around the time of Emerson, who we talked about last night, was one of the first Americans to write about astral projection. No, he wasn't American. He was one of the first Europeans to write about astral projection, and in the mid-1800s. And there is some classical, medieval, and Renaissance teachings, Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, Theosophists, and Rosicrucians, who often taught about astral body projections, subtle bodies, and their associated planes of existence, etc. In the Bible, there are some people who read the Bible and they see evidence that the Bible is talking about astral projection. In the final chapter of the book Ecclesiastic, there is a passage that says, before the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be shattered at the fountain, or the wheel be broken at the cistern, they're basically saying that before the silver cord be loosed talks about the silver cord that is the silver cord between the body and the etheric or the astral body. There's also some talk about it in Paul's second epistle of the Corinthians. Ancient Egypt, they talked about astral projection. China, Taoist teachers talked about astral projection. In India, the yogis and the gurus talked about astral projection and found it to be quite common. In Japanese mythology, they would talk about basically ghosts of the living as astral projection. So in China, it was almost like the evil, or in Japan, it was almost like the evil eye. If somebody was really mad at you, they could project themselves into your space, and the projection of them that was mad with you would curse you. And then something bad would happen. You would die in an earthquake, or lose all your farm animals, or something very bad. The other thing that would happen would be that upon death, people could astral project out of their bodies just before they died or at the moment of death, and go visit with their loved ones, which I have found as a spirit medium is commonly reported to me in the United States, in the Western world, that people will report that they are visited by their grandmother several hours before she dies, and that's how they know she's going, or their grandfather, or someone else. And so, that's not just Japanese, but that's where it is cited on the web today. Inuit groups talk about astral projection, shamanism, shamanic traveling, soul retrieval, astral projection, and the Amazon, going to find the names of babies, going to find healing and herbs, and going to do other things in the astral realm is important and part of many, 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 many traditions. Now, here's one thing I want to say about it, though. As we talk about it tonight, because there are so many different traditions and there are so many different ways of describing what's happening. Some people will say it's the etheric body. Some people will say it's the astral body. Some people will say it's the only way to get direct guidance. Some people will say it's the only way to go visit the Akashic records. So we used to have, when I taught riding lessons and managed a very large horseback riding community group, we had 410 students a week and 20 some instructors. The main thing that we had to say was that there are 250 ways to teach somebody how to post on a horse, which is at the trot, you're posting up and down, or how to stop a horse, or how to sit a trot. We would always say there are 250 different ways to explain how to do it. So as you're listening tonight to the guest that James Tyson is going to bring on, or to myself telling one of my stories, or James telling one of his, understand that we may be talking about something that wasn't what you were taught or wasn't your understanding. But there are probably 250 ways to do anything in the astral realm. And there are probably 250 ways to describe how anything happens in the astral realm. And there are probably 250 different ways to say, well, it's not really the astral, that's just the etheric, or that's by location, or that's remote viewing, or something else. So, we're going to try not to get too hung up on semantics tonight. And we're especially going to try not to get too hung up on the scientific. This is more of a spiritual practice or a consciousness practice, and not something that, lends itself to detection by physical apparatus, which is now the current mode of our modern science. If you can make a physical apparatus to detect something once and then have other people use the same type of apparatus to detect it over and over again, and the apparatus is not detecting its own physical flaws in the process, then you have modern science. Well, that's not really what's going on here, because we're interested in consciousness and experience and in some subjective understanding of reality and experiencing our consciousness and our soul and our spirits in, a more subjective versus modern physical science way. So, that being said, some of the authors that you may have heard about who are talking about astral projection lately, Thomas Campbell, one of my favorites. He worked with Bob Monroe at the Monroe Institute, was starting in college, and he's a physicist, PhD physicist working in computer models of physical reality. And he was one of the few astral travelers who could easily be conscious of his experiences while he was astral traveling. And he also wrote a series of books called My Big Toe, My Big Theory of Everything, that you might want to check out after tonight. They're big, they're long. There are, lots of stories about what happened with him in his life and how, he'd be at work doing physics and he'd be astral traveling at the same time. Man after my own heart, time boxing, doing it all at once. Robert Bruce from Australia. Robert Bruce has wrote some books about how to, Psychic Protection is one of his most famous books. But he's also been working on Journeys Out of Body lately. And so you could check out his books. The writer, novelist Michael Crichton has been talking about his astral travels in a nonfiction book called Travels. And there are many, 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 many more. But the thing to remember is this is not a religion. This is a process. Astral travel is a process. There are ways to do it. There are ways to learn to do it. it's more of a tool for consciousness expansion or expansion of experience of reality or expansion into studying different realms of what's out there than it is a religion. So I hope as you listen to our shows tonight, you won't take any of this as being, quote unquote, a religion. Because what does religion do if we really get stuck on something has to be this way or it has to be that way or it is this way or it's not that way? It provides us with limitation. And as experiencers, we'd maybe like to experience without a whole bunch of limitation. I don't know. Just my idea about that. I did want to talk a little bit about last night's show with Monica Holy. Some people did not believe what she was saying, but I do, and I found it was very interesting that she brought in that she had experiences with aliens, because many of the things that she talked about come up in my next book that I'm writing, Inquiry, which is basically consciousness sharing with other people or time traveling to other conscious and physical parts of oneself. Now, some people will say that that's more of an etheric body travel situation where you do consciousness sharing with another person or consciousness sharing with another incarnation of yourself. But again, semantics. Do we know? Is it astral? Is it etheric? I don't know. But it does happen and people do experience it. Is there scientific proof? No. In my case, I actually did know the name of the person I was in my past life. We talked a little bit about Korea. I was a Korean War vet. I did die in Korea, and I know my name. And I know where I died and how I died. And it took years to get to it. I almost contacted my family. But my understanding of one of the reasons why I remembered who I was and where I was and what my name was and what the situation of my death was is because I had been missing in action and I had had such an intention of coming home to the United States and being reunited with my family that when I got the way that I was able to come back to the United States was to be reborn. Since I didn't want to go to war again, I chose to be reborn in a female body. But then they had this whole other problem of, well, my name's Leroy, Leroy Jr. And my wife, Pat, is not going to understand this, and she's much older than I am right now. So I never did, even though I knew where my family was. I knew for a long time who my family was, who my wife was, who my son was. I never went back to them because I didn't want to be that weird. But there are people whom this happens to that you can find yourself, especially if the person that you were before has a deep desire to be reunited with their family and isn't. So somebody who's MIA, somebody who's in war. Many of us who were born in the 60s survived both World War II and then went to Korea and maybe didn't survive there or died in World War II and then came back. And many of us came back as women because we didn't want to go to war again. And for those of you who think, oh, yeah, that's a bunch of crap, you don't know all the women I know. I got a lot of women friends. And I got a lot of women friends who do astral travel, do consciousness work. And they can look and say, wow, I decided to be a big person because I died in a submarine and I didn't want to be in a submarine again. I would be too big to be in a submarine. So there's a lot of different reasons about why we choose who we are, which can be kind of figured out by this sort of astral or etheric travel back to our last lifetime to take a look at the situation of what we didn't like. Did I like war? No, not so much. Didn't like it at all. Did I like being separated from my family? Really not. All of those things I didn't like. And so there were choices that were made to basically not do that again. Anyway, that's what I found very interesting about Monica's talk yesterday, was that she was talking about time traveling to herself in different incarnations and also consciousness sharing with others. Part of my thought about why that happens is not because it's a lark, or not because it's entertaining, and not because, somebody just wants to have more quote-unquote spiritual skill or be like more spiritual than somebody else. But because part of what some human beings are doing here on Earth is really going through compassion training, learning how to be compassionate to one another. And sometimes the best way to be compassionate to someone is to walk a mile in their moccasins. And what better way to walk a mile in someone's moccasins than to share consciousness with them, than to have a little sort of etheric or astral, bounce into the body of someone who's going through something, or going to some place where something is happening and people need help, and providing as much as you can with the energy that you have in an etheric, time-traveling consciousness bounced out of your body state, some sort of help. That is compassion training. There are Tibetan masters who do what's known as tantric work, and tantric work is not about sex, people. We Americans, I don't know about Canadians, but man, we just go crazy. We hear tantra and we're like, ooh, sacred sex. No, not what it's about. It's about the spiritual experience of life. It's about experiencing spirit in the physical body, in the physical world. So it's a physicalization of spirit. And a lot of tantric masters who are healers will not teach anyone any of their methods. And these would be energy healing methods that are similar to Reiki, or they will be called something else in the Tibetan culture. But they won't teach anyone these methods or these purification practices, these physical 5 skandha purification practices, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. There's another skandha. Sorry, I should have written it down. But they won't teach anyone how to do these practices until they have taken a vow, the bodhisattva vow, or they have vowed bodhicitta. And bodhicitta is this idea that you are willing or compassionate enough, or you want to save all sentient beings from suffering. And sentient beings is animals as well as people, as well as alien beings, as well as life forms that don't have bipedal bodies. Anything that is sentient, that is aware and conscious of itself and can feel pain, you want, the bodhicitta vow is to save them from suffering. So it's basically a vow to be on a path of learning compassion, the most extreme compassion, which is that you have vowed to save all sentient beings from suffering. At that point, when somebody is willing to take that vow, that they are willing to go about dedicating their lives to compassion training or saving all sentient beings from suffering, tantric practitioners will step in and say, well, here, let us give you some help. And there will be initiations, energy initiations, like there are in Reiki, which is something that we're familiar with in the West, and other practices like Jo-Ray. But there are similar ones for Tibetan practices. But without that true and sincere vow to save all sentient beings from suffering, they don't want to teach someone these methods. So a very important thing is we go forward, and you're listening to this person talk today, David McCready, talking about astral projection, is that if you want to learn to do these kinds of practices, if you want to bounce around the universe, if you want to learn how to do healing, or you want to have more energy, or you want to increase your vibration, really consider carefully what your reasons are for wanting to do this. Do you want to do it because you'd like to see all sentient beings be saved from suffering? Do you want to go do some good? Do you want to go be helpful? Or do you want to do it because you want power? And I can tell you, I've met some people who want power, And when they get power, it's not good, because there's a whole other pantheon of spiritual or soul or astral or etheric stuff that happens without this desire in the soul or the heart and the mind to save people from suffering. If you just want, sort of a spiritual egotism, woo, that's a Pandora's box of a different color, or a horse of a different color, like in Oz. So be careful. Listen critically tonight. Not scientifically, because guess what? I doubt we're going to have any sort of detectors. Maybe, Kirlian photography, great, that'd be great. You could do that. But most of the skeptical scientists who are looking for gravity waves and dark matter and antimatter, they don't want to be involved in this kind of research. And so they're never going to say that Kirlian photography does anything, and there's not going to be that kind of disclosure. But our conversation for tonight can be very impactful for people who've done some astral traveling, done some psychic work, done some spiritual work, done some meditation, as long as it's perceived and accepted within that frame of reference. That being said, getting back to me and my stupid astral travel event where I bumped along the ceiling, I decided back then that I did not want to astral travel. And so in 1996, I got lucky. Well, I also learned second-degree Reiki, which was something that I could perceive outside of myself using second-degree Reiki for healing. I would have a lot of perception who I was doing healing work on, whether it was an animal or a person or a situation. But I also learned remote viewing, and I tend to stay in my body and do what's called bilocate. So I'm very conscious of my body. I'm not floating around with the silver cord. And most of the time, if I do that, I don't let myself remember, because I had a bad experience. It's sort of like, you go on the twister at the fairgrounds and it doesn't work out well, and you don't ever want to remember if you go on the twister again at the fairgrounds. Well, that's what happened to me. So I do things differently. I tend to stay in my body. I tend to stay conscious. I tend not to go into trance where I forget things. And it's just because I'm my own personal control freak. I like to know what's going on, and I like to, stick with the things I know work for me. But I suppose someday I'm going to have to learn to do something different. Since I have been told that I am astral traveling at light, I would like to remember what I've been doing, because I like to know. That's my thing. I like to know. I've been doing what? Going where? Seeing who? Says who? You saw me? Like Monica Holy, I actually had someone in my early 20s who spotted me. I came through their window. I floated through their window and did a healing on the daughter of a woman who was the security guard for my office building. And I went into work the next day, and she ran up to me and she started kissing my face, saying, "You're an angel. You're an angel. You came and you healed my daughter. You're an angel." And I was like, had no idea about any of this stuff. I had no idea about astral travel. I had no idea about any of it at that point in time. And I was just like, okay, you're a little nutty lady. So I would like to know if things like this are happening. So maybe tonight Eugene Braxton or Dave McCready can help me out, or someone James is going to talk to. That being said, let's talk about James for a bit right after the break. Let's go into break and let's bring James on, because I want to pick his brain about stuff. Don't you?
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Fairies? Bigfoot? Dogmen? Trolls? Goblins? Hey, if it's cryptid in any way, I'm looking into it. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, also known as Spaced Out Radio's Crypto Guru. Join me every second Wednesday of the month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will talk about the stories people call tall tales. I will fill you in on the latest sightings and the hidden histories that are causing quite a stir. You can find everything at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr, or my Facebook page, Rivulet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings, no matter where you are. It's time for you to make time for you.
Are you an ET experiencer, but you just don't know what's going on? Are you too timid or shy to discuss it with anyone? Maybe I can help. Join me, R. Keith Andrews, the first Friday of every month on Spaced Out Radio, and I will help you to find the answers you're looking for. Together, I will help you understand the off-worlders and the true meanings behind your experiences. All you have to do is join us in the Spaced Out Radio chat room. See you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio?
Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us.
From the radio, commercials, to banners, to social media.
Have a product you'd like our host to endorse? We can do that too.
Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Spaced Out Weekend and Cosmic Passport can be heard every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. We're always 3 hours a night, 7 days a week. And you can listen to Spaced Out Radio Monday through Friday as well. If you would like to advertise with us, go to our website, spacedoutradio.com, click on the Advertise with Us banner, and find the package that best suits your advertising needs.
Hello, Elizabeth.
Hello, James.
How the dickens are you?
I'm good. I just took a drink of this fizzy water. People have questions.
They did. Now, Joe was asking if one who is astro traveling can be seen by Joe Sixpack standing on the corner if somebody is astro projecting around them.
You know, I think it would depend on the person and what they want to do. I doubt it, but I suppose if somebody had a lot of energy and they wanted Joe Sixpack to see them, it's sort of like the Japanese, the idea of the Japanese person that they would see it would either be your enemy who wanted to curse you in their astral body, or like grandma who was about to pass would show up. And if the intention was quite focused and strong that you would see them, then you would see them. And there are people who appear to manifest different places, like physically apart places, but they may be astral traveling. And it may be that if their intention is strong enough, they can. I don't have any personal experience with this myself, so I'm just supposing. I was just telling James that A few years ago, I was on Thomas Campbell's site, and there were a few people on there who really were into astral travel as an ego trip. Like, it wasn't just an astral trip, it was an ego trip. And I'm a fairly good psychic, and so Thomas and I were talking about, because I do most of my stuff, it's remote viewing, and so I get good information, and I've worked with professors at veterinary schools before with the information I have. And so, all these things that they say that there's no scientific proof that you can remote view anything with any accuracy is kind of BS, because I have actually experienced doing it. But by the same token, if you tell the wrong people this and they get upset, they'll do things like threaten to come to your house and astral travel into your house, and I bet you won't even be able to see me. And it was like, yeah, because I'll be sucked into my computer because I won't really care that you're coming to my house. And I bet you my dog might bark at you, but I don't really care because I have other things to be doing than worrying about you astral traveling into my house, where you're not going to be able to move anything around or do anything anyway. So, better you astral travel to heal somebody or help somebody than just because you want to be a show-off or threaten them.
Now, last night we had Monica Holy on, and her astral travel, astral projection was strictly to help somebody. And it seemed to be that's the reason she did it. There was no other explanation for her having to go from her body to the other side or someplace else in North America to open the door of a bus that's crashed so some kids could get up off of it. So there's a tasking in her case. Now, when doing that task, she has the capability to interacting physically with something there. But I think because she's being tasked by a higher power, she has that capability. Are people, if I was going to do it, if someone taught me how to astral travel, and they better do it before July 9th, would I be able to, if my vibration was high enough, would I be able then to touch something and actually make contact? Or is that how it works? If someone has a higher vibration? Because I can't see these boneheads who learned how to do astral projection, astral traveling, not, threatening to come over. And, I don't like you, so I'm going to come over and hang around your house. I'll show you. Well, if you can't see them, who really cares? Right, and they can't touch anything. Yeah. And, then all they're doing is being internet goons, internet bullies, with a little paranormal twist. This is what I know from being a spirit medium, and maybe David McCready could tell you more about, influence, remote influencing. I would call it remote physical influencing. I have a friend who died in 1997. He was murdered, but he was a huge guy. He had a big energy when he was alive. He was 6'4", 6'5", 225 pounds, big guy. And when he died, he was able to manipulate, and he was a mechanic and he was an astronomer, and he was able to build things, and he built amazing things when he was alive and fixed things, and Harley Davidsons he fixed, but in his case, what he did the day that I found out that he died was he came and he fixed the radio in my car. And it had never worked. I bought a used car for $400. The radio didn't work. I didn't care because it was $400. And the day that he died, that I learned that he died, he fixed the radio and he tuned it to a station that played My Way, which is what he said he wanted played at his memorial. So I turn on the car and the thing that's playing is My Way. And then the next song is Catch a Falling Star and Put It in Your Pocket, and he was an astronomer. And then the next song is When You Wish Upon a Star. And I was, I had to get in the car to go pick up a cat that we had shared. I had shared this cat with him, even though he wasn't my lover or my husband or anything like that. He was just a really good friend. My cat got sick on the day that he died. And I think it was because his energy was pulling away from the physical realm, and he had a lot of energy attached to my cat. And so the day that he died, my cat got sick, and I learned about it 3 days later, and this is the moment after I learned about it, my radio was fixed, and it was playing all of the songs that he would play
on some bizarre radio station that he had somehow manipulated to play these songs for him. So the spirits can do things like that. They can manifest things. They can fix things. My understanding about him as a spirit is that he still has a lot of physical energy, and that sometimes he will. I've been told that sometimes he will go do things like moderate where earthquakes are, or help with earth changes, or help with decompressing the earth so there aren't big earthquakes in majorly populated areas, because he, as a spirit, has that much physical energy left over. So there's that. So it depends on you. Like, are you a person who has a lot of physical energy? Well, then I suppose if you're etherically or astrally traveling, that you would have that physical energy to manipulate or manifest or influence physical items from the spiritual or the etheric realm or the soul realm or the astral realm, however you want to put that, however you want to call it. But it would depend on you.
Okay, I've got another question. If once you leave your body, if you left it behind and you kind of had a long string connecting to it, as you beam yourself around the universe, is it your body vulnerable to other energies?
You see, I think that's a fear that you want to avoid having. In my case, I had that fear, and it was a really terrible experience. But I do find I have worked with some people in my healing practice, and who are astral travelers, who do now feel like they are open to negative entity attack, or that they can't really protect themselves from being taken over by negative entities. Now, there's a trick and a trap in that. Because if you really believe in the idea that you can be taken over by negative entities and that you are powerless to dispel them or keep them out of your space, then guess what? You're powerless, if that is your belief system. And it's very hard when somebody gains that belief system to do anything to teach them otherwise. And they get into a thought loop. It's like a feedback loop where it's like, no, somebody else has to help me. Well, they didn't do a very good job helping me. And they become sort of like this vampire, narcissistic, needy, helpless person because they have this one idea that they keep getting taken over by negative entities and they can't do anything themselves to stop it. The law, in my opinion and in my experience, the law of the spiritual universe is free will. And if you are working through something by, astral traveling and then having negative entities come and get you, you need to be aware of it, that you are working through it and it is your thing. And if you want to stop doing it, you have the free will to stop doing it. Okay? And because it's a trick, like when you get into the astral realm, whatever you think starts to happen.
Yeah.
So be careful what you think and be careful what you fear.
So that's the problem I would have, because it's kind of that whole Ghostbusters thing. I'd have the, giant puff marshmallow man coming down the road. Like, I would drift. I know. Oh, this is really cool. I'm above the clouds, and it would be like being in an airplane, but I hope I don't hit an airplane. You'd have to, I am not good. I can barely focus, on tying my shoes, let alone astral traveling across the universe.
Yeah, that's why it's a good idea to have a reason why you want to do it. I mean, helping people or saving people from a bus crash or helping people who are crossing over or doing something with a compassionate bent to it. You get all sorts of spiritual help when you intend to do any sort of work with bodhicitta, which is this idea that you want to save all sentient beings from suffering. If you are willing to say, I want to do this because I want to help other people, because I want to save them from suffering, or I want to bring them the best outcome possible in difficult situations, then you're going to get tons of help. You're going to get teachers in spirit. You're going to get good teachers in spirit. You're going to get lots of protection. But if you go about messing with this stuff from the perspective of, I want power, I'm mad with someone, so I'm going to get out of my body and curse them, or, make things move around their house, or be the ghost in their house that freaks them out, well, then you're going to get teachers in that realm of being tricksters and little, trickster spirits and negative entity spirits and stuff like that. So do you really want to hang out with them? I don't think I do, but, some people do. No.
Well, that's no fun then.
I know. It's so boring. Such a goody two-shoes.
Oh, you're like that. You're just like that.
Oh
my Lord. What I'd like to do is give you some more time here. Well, I've got to run outside the little log cabin here and adjust the rabbit ears on the roof, because our guest David McCready is coming to us 6 o'clock in the morning tomorrow morning in London, England. So he's going to have to start sliding in here relatively soon. So I'm going to back out of the cabin here just for a sec, if you don't mind, Elizabeth, and I'll see if there's another question here before I bail on you. Let's see. Somebody had asked something. Actually, when you do a astral projection, is it an awake time for you? Is it I'm going to lay down, I'm going to meditate, and I'm going to go, or is it something that just takes over basically on its own while you're asleep?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you run, because I'm not on the chat group. So for me, when I had my bad experience, it was an awake time. It was a willful meditation into getting out of my body and then bouncing around at the top of the roof and not being able to get back in, which is really common. I heard it was really common. I just didn't like it. So now when I work, I'm not an alien abductee anymore so much as I am somebody who goes off with aliens and does things on the astral plane, or mentally goes, sort of in the etheric and the astral, I'll go and do things. So now it is I go to sleep. I'm not put to sleep. Nobody comes and turns me off. Nobody nobody makes it so I can't move within my body. It's just once I go to sleep, I will get out of my body and I will go to where the group that I work with is, and we'll do some work while I'm there. And sometimes that there is not that far away. I know that I've done work on my own property before with a group that is there, that has come to visit and is in my own property, because my property was in the middle of nowhere. It was a good place to meet. So it really depends on what your situation is. It depends on what you want to do. It depends on how you want to work. Thomas Campbell was astral traveling when he was at work, working on projects. He was using one part of his brain to work on physics, while the other part of his brain was off surfing with whales and dolphins in the water. So he was etherically going to some place on Earth and having fun in his astral body underwater with whales and dolphins. And he writes about this. And that's very cool. Hey, if you're bored at work, don't surf the net, surf the astral realm. That was something that he was able to do, was to do two things at once. I think it really would depend on you and what your strengths and weaknesses and what you're here to learn are all about. One of the things, and this leads me to another thing, that they do talk about the Akashic records in terms of astral travel. And they do say in a lot of places that in order to access the Akashic records, you have to astral travel there. You don't. You can remote view them. You can psychically read them. You can get a guide, a record keeper, to point out relevant records in the Akashic records library. And I now, after so many years of doing this, look at the Akashic records as like DVDs, so that when you change your life lesson plan, like you want to alter and amend and change what you originally came up with for your life lesson plan, or you want to change how it's manifesting, that you can go to the Akashic records and there'll be DVDs, like these holographic DVDs along a theme. And the record keeper will be like, okay, so you're not really happy with this one, or you didn't really take advantage of what this one had to teach you. How about this one? Which is very similar, but instead of, this, and this, you get that, and that. And it's sort of like it's the difference between rom-com and Rambo, It's like, you may be learning rom-com this lifetime, or you may be learning Rambo if you're in the military, or you may decide you're getting out of the military and you want to learn rom-com for a while. So, I have this whole, Blockbuster Video Akashic record thing
and you know what happened to them. So
I know, not Blockbuster. Now it's Netflix.
Do you actually, once you take one of those DVDs from the Akashic Records, can you keep them, or do they come and get them? Anyway, hey,
they'll take them back. They'll take them back. They will.
A friend of ours from way out there in West Virginia. Can you truly get lost while astral projecting?
I don't know. That's a question for David McCready. Since I am on the radio with you, I expect that any of the times that I went out to do work that I don't remember, I haven't gotten lost because I happen to be here now. And
the other thing too is, I guess you're still connected. So if you follow your tail back, you'll get back to your meat sack wherever it is.
Well, and it has to do with intention. And this is the same thing for remote viewing as it is. It's targeting an intention. If you are very certain of what it is that you want to do and that you are capable of doing it, and you set an intention that is the thing that will happen, that is the thing that will happen. And it may be you at your higher level having the intention, but if you want to do it consciously, you have to consciously set your intention, because the moment that you start to get ADD brain, you might end up really interesting places. That's something to ask David about. Do people end up places they don't expect because they get ADD brain?
Yeah, who knows? It's I know that a friend of the show's Noreen Reiner, Renier, actually, because I always say it wrong. She is she's a medium PI. She helps police in crime, solving crimes and dealing with the past on the other side. She is invited every year to a conference that is held in various locations around the U.S., and it's just a bunch of people that used to work for the CIA that did remote viewing back during the Cold War, and they invite her to speak about her remote viewing and astral traveling, because she does it completely different than they were taught. And again, they were taught by the U.S. government how to do this, where they could actually go and look inside of a closed safe in Cuba or Saskatchewan or whatever they wanted to look at, and if there was a stack of documents, they can not only look at the top one, but they can move through the stack without touching them. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. Her experience and her conversations with these guys, over a beer, it would have been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that's what's so weird is, if you look up any of the stuff on Wikipedia and they say, the CIA said it didn't work, they didn't find anything. I believe one of it was either Pat Price or Pat Parnell, the guy who was a policeman, who was a police detective, who became a remote viewer for the government. If you look at his session materials, when he was looking at installations in Russia during the Cold War and other things, with the protocols that they used, and these are some of the same protocols or very similar protocols that you can learn through Farsight, which is now nonprofit, which is awesome. But with the protocols that they used, he was coming up with just this incredible levels of detail using the protocols that only, somebody who is a police detective who is already paying attention to what's around him and gathering information anyway would come up with. I've taught remote viewing, and I teach remote viewing along the Farsight protocols. And time again, and I don't know why they say there's no scientific evidence, is I'll take 3 or 4 students, and EXO, these will be people who think they're average, who just think that they don't have any skill whatsoever. But if you run them through these protocols, they will come up all with the Challenger explosion, or they will come up all with the Statue of Liberty, or they will come up all with the bombing of an abbey in Italy during World War II. When you run through some of the targets that Farsight has, people will, by and large, come up with them in one way or another. They might look at them from different angles. Some person might sense more of the smells and the sounds. Some person might sense more of the structures. Some person might sense more of the people that are around during the time the target was photographed. But it's all the same target. And that's what's amazing. And to say that there's no scientific evidence, when you can take somebody who's never done it before and they'll come up with the same thing as everybody else, and you're listening to what the person running the protocols is telling them, they're not giving them any clues. Yeah. So it's amazing stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I really got to get this going. And again, for the listener, we're having a meet and greet at the Great Pyramid in Giza on July 9th, 10th, where there's a full moon. And so if you don't know how to astral project, astral travel, now we're going to have a few people on over the next month or two, and we're going to have some lessons from our good friend Eugene Braxton to Elizabeth. Anybody out there, we're going to grab a bunch of people and we're going to break it down into the how-tos of astral projection, astral travel, and we can see if we actually can see each other when we get there. But what a cool place. Imagine for your first trip, bouncing around the Sphinx, which isn't really that exciting. Literally, those places are on the other side of a wall connected to the city of Giza, and past all the tourist places. But it'd be kind of cool, all hanging out there. And if we can get to the point where we can see each other, that would be cool too. So basically, make sure that when you do learn this, that you have clothes on, because that could be embarrassing. Because I know I'm going to show up naked, and everybody else will be like in fancy dress or in suits and tuxedos and formal, and I'll be the one with holding a very small bush in front of me. That's a question. You when you're astro traveling, is it strictly it's strictly your energy going? It's not a like image of your body?
I don't know. I mean, I think I usually put the impression that I have clothes on when I'm astral traveling. But again, I don't have that much memory of it. And a lot of people don't. So it'd be really interesting to hear from David and hear from Eugene how to remember. And, I would feel much more comfortable at the appointed time on July 9th as just sitting down and bilocating via remote viewing and looking at you all and going, hi, because I'd still be aware of my body sitting in the chair here. And then I would not feel like, oh my gosh, how do I think I get overwhelmed by the idea of how far it actually is to Egypt. It's like I make geographic distance too solid, significant, and real. So, yeah, and I would like to think that I would put clothes on at this point. At 20, it was different, but... Yeah,
you'd just be bouncing around the stars naked.
Naked.
Maybe if we can, when we're astro traveling, we can pick the body we want.
Yeah, I'll pick the body I had when I was 20.
And I'll pick the body of a guy I know who lives down the road, but yeah, he's actually he dances, so maybe.
Oh yeah, pick him.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. But yeah, if we had a choice, might as well go in a new hat. Who knows? Mm-hmm. All right, look at that time, young lady.
It is that time. Tonight, I wish you well. I may be listening in. I won't be on chat because I'm tired and it's Sunday and I've got a lot of work tomorrow. But I hope it's good. I think I'll just leave on the show to listen and take care of my demented cat.
Excellent.
And good night.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Elizabeth Anglin. She'll be back next Saturday with me if you don't hear her earlier on with Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio. Go meet your friend on Facebook. She's a nice lady. She doesn't bite. Okay, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure she does. Okay, good night, youngster, and come by Astral Travel whenever you happen to be in the area.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Silly door never works. Dave, what did you do to
It's
this?
time to go live on Spaced Out Weekend.
13, please. Oh, hi, Kevin. Oh, is that the time? Kevin, my friend, don't you find that watch just a little bit loud? Well, I certainly hope our buddy Bumblefoot is playing when we get there. Oh, you stinky big bundle of hair. I said Bumblefoot, not Bigfoot. Oh, it's going to be a long night.
It's time to head to the 13th floor of the old log cabin for Spaced Out Weekend with James Tyson. You can tweet James at James Tyson SOR. You can find him on Instagram, Spaced Out Weekend, as well as on Facebook. On YouTube, our channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and you can check out our website, spacedoutradio.com. And now, perched high in his captain's chair, way above the clouds, here's James Tyson.
We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We must do for so long.
Welcome, everybody, to another fabulous Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. It is I, James Tyson. Here I am, minding my own business up on the 13th floor of the Spaced Out Radio Network in my little old log cabin located here in the paranormal portals of the lower left Canadian coast. And tonight we have, all the way from London, England, a gentleman who is, he's quite the guy. He is quite the interesting fellow. He is an author. He is he's written a couple of books, but this guy has actually written a encyclopedia. And it's an encyclopedia based on the entities and the aliens that he's run into during his astral projection. Now, this is David McCready, and he was born in the United Kingdom in 1963. And he was he's the first son of homeopathic doctors. Both parents displayed good intuitive skills, and his maternal grandfather was ahead of his time in this regard. You can go to his website at www.greatsimulator.com, not his grandfather's, but David's, greatsimulator.com. Now, young David displayed no obvious clairvoyant skills, and his interests mainly lay with mechanical things. He ultimately qualified as a professional structural engineer and project manager. He went on to principally work as a building and maintenance contractor dealing with comprehensive range of mechanical and electrical systems. So obviously he's that kind of mind, hands, creative, building kind of guy. He always had an interest otherwise in visible or unreachable worlds. In 1995, David achieved reliable access, now listen to this, to the astral world and an array of non-physical beings who were able to take over his adult education. David was then able to set aside his engineering profession and instead specialize in training people in astral science and projection. In 1914, that would have been a good astral projection. In 2014, David, this is what kind of freaks me out. He was upgraded with a special consciousness abilities which would enable him to lead pioneering research into extraterrestrial worlds using astral projection. The upgrade team was led by a character he knows as Doc. Now, Doc was a grasshopper, and Dave, if you get a copy of Encyclopaedia, you can look up the grasshoppers. By this, he means it was possible for David to help many people personally have repeated brief experiences of life on alien worlds, and the Encyclopedia research team came into existence. In 2016, which is now, David is married and has a wonderful wife and 2 sensitive children, and this could be best described as an arranged family where David was made aware of the 2 children who they would be years before they were even born, and similarly got a vision of who their mother would be. And if you think that is interesting, well, you just wait until we hear from David. Now, David, again, is in London, England, and we are still trying to cross the ocean. We've been texting back and forth, but as far as the connection goes, we'll see how this thing works. And if this doesn't work, I've got a cell phone, and we'll all phone him on his cell phone. No, we won't. I'll give him a call on his cell phone here. It's the questions. If you want questions about, I shouldn't say about, but if you have questions in regards to this level of astral projection, which it was one of the most extreme levels that I believe, it's one of those things that as a layman, when in astral projection, or even talking to people with this ability, I can't see. David is going to be the expert on this, and I have so many questions. David, are you there now? Oh, brilliant. Hello, sir. How are you?
We're in the dawn of London in England. The sun's trying to come up over a grey horizon here.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful to connect with you. We were having a bit of an issue somewhere between Greenland and Ireland, and we kept getting bounced off, but I'm glad you're with us. And in the pre-show, we were talking to, we have a psychic, Elizabeth England, out of the United States in New Mexico, who does astral projection, but not on the level that you've done it. And you've missed your fabulous introduction. So, but we do have a chat room going, so I may be bouncing in there and asking you some questions, as relaying it in from our friend in the chat room, as well as a chat room on the primary podcast too. So you bear with me as I'm doing that. We've got a number of people lined up here who are giddy to have you on. Now, in your introduction that I did have, this is something that came to you quite a while ago, but can you tell me what it was? What the very first inkling you had that you were chosen, or you were a little bit different than everyone else?
Well, I'm not different to everyone else. It's important to realize this. We all have hidden abilities deep within ourselves, but for reasons I'll get into more during the show, on the Earth world we experience, we're programmed to stay put. So even though we have the ability to do amazing things, in order to have the amazing adventure of being alive on Earth, it's important that we don't wander off too much. And all I've really done is to override some of that programming and have a look through the general illusion of life that we experience. And it is a wonderful illusion, much better than any ordinary movie film you might go to.
Oh, fascinating.
So to get it into what happened, like many people in this field, I was always experiencing an interest in the subject. And I'm sure many of the listeners will recognize that they too have just always had an interest in these sorts of subjects. And as they've developed into adults, it simply got stronger, and they will have spent more time pursuing these interests. What gave me a really big nudge forward was many years ago, probably during the sort of 1980s thereof, or beginning of 1990s, I picked up a book on self-hypnosis, and at one or two pages from the very back of it, it mentioned a subject called astral projection. And this described how you could get your consciousness to leave your body and go into another world where you could bump into very helpful beings, often described as guiding spirits, or perhaps look up some deceased relatives. And upon reading this, I thought, that's for me. I've got to learn how to do this, because where I was living at the time, there were no wonderful spiritual masters or teachers available. And it struck me that the teachers I needed to work with probably weren't living at the Earth dimension. They were somewhere above it, and I really needed to meet them and discover what they knew and learn from them. So that's really how it got started.
Oh, I see. And these people that these beings that you're learning from, did you ever get the feeling that they actually reached out to you as opposed to you're reaching out to them?
Well, we would understand this at the Earth level, that someone else comes and communicates with you from afar. But having looked at their perspective, everything looks somewhat different. And from their perspective, they would see a human being as a little artificial reality room. And if one of their numbers, one of these guiding spirits or other spirit beings, were to enter that artificial reality room, they would start to experience being a human being. And it would become a very compelling experience where you forget where you've come from, and you suddenly start feeling you're in the midst of this struggle for life on Earth.
Okay.
So I said their friends would be looking in and saying, well, one of our numbers gone into the artificial reality suite. We can see them. They can't really see us properly. But we'll probably try and look in on them now and again and say hello. So you have to realize that all of us are having this amazing experience here, and we are actively participating in it and causing it to happen. So if you want to engage in astral world experiences, you start to switch off the illusion of Earth you're busy connecting to. Think of your body as being essentially a kind of focusing machine that focuses you in this earthly dimension. And if you simply reduce the amount of focusing it's doing in this dimension, it allows you to explore other dimensions. Is that explaining it in a way that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. It does explain it in a way that it does make sense. Now, you've written a book called The Great Simulator, Parts 1 and 2. Is this a training book, or more or less, or is it something that? Oh, it is, okay. That because that is one of the things that I'm interested in, is learning how to do astral traveling and astral projection.
Yeah. The Great Simulator book is explaining to you the mechanism of what's happening, and it also explains how you start to notice where you really are, and it talks you through the steps to do it. By comparison, the Real Alien Worlds book, and I have to say real is an odd word in that all worlds we experience are an illusion to some extent, but it's real in the sense that you can visit such places, you can get to them astrally. The Real Alien Worlds book covers the subject of what you can do when you get your astral projection skills up to speed. It's reminding you, here's lots of places you can visit, and when you do, you'll discover that you have what can loosely be described as friends and family living on other worlds, and when those worlds are more advanced than the Earth's one, they will inevitably be able to look back to places such as the Earth and see you. And wouldn't it be a good thing if you could get your astral projection skills up to speed and say hello to them? A bit of a family reunion would become possible.
Yeah, if I'm still concerned about the Grasshopper doc you had. So I don't know if that's exactly my family, but I guess we're all family in the great scheme of things. Yeah. What is the difference between real astral projection and heavy and light astral projection?
Okay. If I return to something I mentioned very briefly about describing the human body as a focusing machine that concentrates you into the earth dimension, you also have a spirit body that does exactly the same job. So, for example, when we see a ghost or a medium sees a very strong apparition of someone who's, say, deceased, what they're really seeing is a spirit body that acts as a focusing machine, and it also helps your physical body act as a focusing machine. Now, with heavy astral projection, what happens is every night your physical body gets put into a sleep state and your spirit body floats out to a small extent. Everyone will have often noticed this. If, say, for example, you're falling asleep, you'll sometimes feel like you're falling or going weightless, and it causes a bit of a jerk or a surprise because you're not used to weightlessness. And that's the example where the spirit body is separating from the physical one. And you then go into a world where you still experience human things, you have lucid dreams, or you might be floating around your bedroom, but you're still essentially within this focusing machine. Now, if you're looking at light astral projection, what we're trying to do is leave a lot of that focusing machine where it was on Earth. Leave it with your body. And you can then allow yourself to borrow the focusing abilities of things like guiding spirits or angelic beings, because they have a whole different panoramic vision, and you switch into that. And it would be helpful to realize that if you're doing, say, a heavy astral projection down near the Earth level, you'll run into lots of other different life forms, but very few highly intelligent guiding spirits or very informative beings of that sort. So if you want to get into the more useful beings out there that you can really learn from, you have to get some distance beyond the Earth plane. So you need to leave a lot of that heavy earthly material where it was and float into the higher astral. And then to explain a further trick to the whole thing, if you want to experience an alien world, you then need to drop down into their world and you start to experience their spirit bodies and then ultimately their physical bodies. So to recap on how it's done, if you want to visit an alien world, you need to leave most of your human spirit form and obviously your physical body where it is. You need to take the most minimal element of your consciousness float up high and then drop that consciousness into another world, and then you start to experience what it's like to be in the body of an alien being with perhaps a different breathing mechanism or living in a higher dimension environment where you can see, for example, the godly presence that shines over us all rather more easily. And thus you can swap between the two. Am I making sense as I describe all of this?
Yeah, it does. It paints a very good picture of this. One of the questions we have from our chat room, Joe is asking if we astral travel to an outside of our Earth to any other world, do we have the physical capability of bringing something back, whether a stone or a leaf or a note or anything, or is it strictly ethereal?
Well, from my experiences so far as being strictly ethereal, I wouldn't want to deny the possibility that you could physically get something transported from one region to another. And in this respect, beings who live on other worlds do manage to transport themselves into the earthly world. So we know that they've got that physical ability, but I would say at the moment I don't personally know how it's done, other than to say that it probably can be done.
Okay. And two more questions here before I get going with some of mine. In astral travel and astral projection, is it started by using an imagination? Like if you're thinking of the Milky Way and allow your thoughts to see it, is that where you would go? Or is it something like it? And I'm going to add this to the question. That was a question from Claudia. But if I was doing a meditation and I focused on a location or I pinpointed something, is that where I would go? Or is the destination something you think about once you're up and gone?
Okay, I think we've got three questions here.
Oh, okay.
And by the way, forgive me if when we're having these conversations, if sometimes I seem to be answering a slightly different question to the one you posed.
Oh, no problem.
That will be because I may not have heard it properly.
Like my accent.
For a few reasons. So it's all right. If I haven't quite answered the question, do reiterate it and we'll try and get it answered. So the beginning of that one was, are you using your imagination? Then you were asking about, are we doing some sort of meditation? And finally, you were saying, is there some sort of target you want to go to? So to start at the beginning of that one, the parts of the brain that are used for imagination are normally rambling along and picking up a lot of low astral inputs and stimulus. If you can get all of that to go quiet, your mind will then, instead of chattering it to itself, and what I mean by that is everyone will have a little voice where you seem to be talking to yourself, all of that will seem to go quiet, and you won't get any normal imaginative images coming in, and then replacing it, you'll start to see other things. So the part of your brain that does imagination is used, but instead of allowing a lot of static and interference to come in, you get rid of that, and then other images start to arrive. It's also worth explaining that it's a whole body experience. When you're doing these sorts of things and you're connecting into other worlds, you physically feel yourself going there. And that's not something that you'd have during rambling imagination. So there are a number of quite discernible differences. The next one is this connected to meditation? Well, yes, and there's a lot of people do meditation techniques of sitting for hours on end, but it's often questionable about what they're up to, because during those periods, if you simply connected better to the guiding spirits around you, you would then find that they would start to interact with you and have conversations of sorts, and astrally take you to interesting places. So meditation could be seen as a starting point for something that becomes much more interesting and interactive. To go on to the third point about can you go towards a target, I personally find that there's an element of invitation running. So, for example, this evening for you and this morning for me in the world I'm in, we are experiencing a moment of getting together. And when you're using astral projection to go to alien worlds, you'll often find that there needs to be someone at the other end helping you out. It's a two-way process where a two-way portal exists. You can look into their world and they can see into the human world. And for this to work, everyone has to be working in a synchronized way. So sometimes I find I might want to be looking into another world, but it's as if it's offline to some extent. And you can leave a message and you can perhaps get through later, but it's difficult to get through. But then when they are online, in your human world, you'll often get a sense of a message coming through. And many years at a time, I've suddenly had a sense coming to my head, are you there? Shall we do something? And it's time to go online and we can link up. So it is a very two-way process. And I often describe this as being invited into other worlds. Is that covering the questions that were being asked, or am I missing?
Oh, no, that was good. And it was just the way I kind of translated the question, too. It broke it down into those three. Another question was just came through, and it was in regards to something you said earlier about experiencing the different breathing mechanisms and the different ways the entities from different worlds are. And I don't know if the question was from somebody who didn't quite catch it, but they're asking that can you actually astral travel and then step inside of, let's say, a being from another world, step inside of them and experience the way they breathe and the way they see?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
In the work we do, I've on many occasions helped other people to have a variety of such experiences. And I recall a few weeks ago, I was working with a lovely couple where they both realized that instead of experiencing having human hands, they had a different configuration of hands and fingers, and they joked about how it felt a little bit more like pincers than human fingers, because they were experiencing a different body shape, and similarly how having much wider eyes that, rather like insects, have compound eyes with great lateral vision. They could sense on this other world they had a much bigger lateral vision, but on Earth we only have forward vision. So they were experiencing the tangible differences between human bodies and other body forms. So yes, you can switch into them and experience what it's like.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's but now here's the next question. If we are in them, we aren't in a position to control anything. We can't lift an arm or turn the head, can we?
With cooperation, you could do that. It's a joint experience. And very often when you get to connect to these beings, they're very happy to show you things. They're happy to show you their environment. They're happy to show you what it's like to do things. For example, one of the beings who really helped put the alien research book together, who I refer to as the doc, simply because one day he posed to me, he said, I hadn't really asked his name. And I said, that's true. And we've been doing stuff for about a month. And then we realized, due to language difficulties, that there wasn't really a translatable name. But he was of the view that the nickname, the Doc, translated quite well into earthly language, because in his world he was essentially a medical staff. And he described his work, or showed his work, to be helping what we'd understand to be their astronauts who traveled into other dimensions and other worlds, and basically got their heads a bit screwed up by everything. Because in our world, in the earthly world, there are rather strange energies and thought patterns that come into your head. And when their astronauts have visited low-level worlds, they came back sometime a bit disorientated, and it was the doc's job to straighten them out. So he showed me this as his activity, but because he was essentially a flying animal, he also demonstrated what it was like for him to fly. And if you can imagine having on your back attached a very powerful set of flight muscles that then operate wings, and flight feels incredibly easy. It's rather like we sometimes might just sort of walk down the street happily, and suddenly you'd be able to fly and you'd be looking down on the landscape. You would demonstrate what it's like to be in that sort of body type and landing back wherever he'd want to come to his destination. So we get these wonderful little shared experiences, and the interactions built up.
Oh, brilliant.
Carry on. What questions have we got?
Well, we're going to take our first commercial break of the show. And while we're on our break, I asked my listener to go to www.greatsimulator.com. Again, www.greatsimulator.com, and read a little bit more about what David does and what his team does. And we're going to be right back right after this.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Hi there, this is Elizabeth Anglin, and on the last Monday of every month, I join Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's Cosmic Passport. We delve into everything from extraterrestrial contact to animal communication. It's a lot of fun, and every month it's something different and exciting. I would love it if you would join us. You can hear and learn from my experiences, and I'd like to know about yours as well. Cosmic Passport on spacedoutradio.com.
Fairies? Bigfoot? Dogmen? Trolls? Goblins? Hey, if it's cryptid in any way, I'm looking into it. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, also known as Spaced Out Radio's Crypto Guru. Join me every second Wednesday of the month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will talk about the stories people call tall tales. I will fill you in on the latest sightings and the hidden histories that are causing quite a stir. You can find everything at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is your medium Joanna from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Is the 24-hour world starting to wear you down? Let me from Rivulet Reiki and Ratings lend you a hand. Hi, this is Jolene, and if you're in need of Reiki or a room reading, come to my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r, and let us help you out. At Rivulet, I specialize in healing your body, mind, and soul, no matter where you are. And be sure to check out the Rivulet R&R Facebook page for your best deals. Remember, it's time for you to make some time for you.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Spaced Out Weekend with James Tyson can be found at spacedoutradio.com. Head to our website where you can join the Space Travelers and sign up for your new membership. You can also follow James on Twitter at James Tyson SOR. Now, back to our paranormal guru, James Tyson.
Welcome back, everybody. We are speaking with David McCready all the way from his office in London, England, in the middle of the morning, at the beginning of the morning. I'm sure the sun is peeking up a little bit more now, David, than it was when you first got on about half an hour ago. And
yeah, that's right.
We're talking to David about astral projection, astral traveling, and taking a couple of the questions off the chat room. But one of the things that I kind of touched on real briefly, and way before the break, before I asked a few more questions, was the difference between heavy astral projection and light astral projection. Could you just go over that again, please?
Well, in heavy astral projection, you are normally taking a large amount of your spirit body and your human personality and moving very close to the earthly physical level. If you're doing light astral projection, you're taking the more refined inner essence of what you are, that inner consciousness, and going to higher levels. So you leave behind a lot of your human personality. And as you might imagine, all these things can take you to different dimensions. So if you want to go to a very low dimension, you need some heavy body to function there. And if you want to go to very high dimensions, you need to leave the heavy body behind. I personally started astral projection doing the very heavy versions of this. So I would try lying on my bed and seeing if I could push myself out of my body, which was hideously hard to do. And I never really managed to pushing out very well, but occasionally would kind of fall out almost by accident. Or on one occasion, I recall a guiding spirit got fed up with the mucking about, and it felt like being grabbed by the arm of my spirit body and dragged out of my body. And then I found myself flying over the ground, looking down. I couldn't quite see who was towing me. It was rather like being one of those little gliders where an aeroplane is tugging it along in the distance, but you can't quite see who's tugging you. And I recall things like that happening. So those were very heavy astral projections. They were kind of unreliable. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it didn't. Very hit and miss. But with light astral projection, you allow your guiding spirits to help lift out that inner consciousness. You leave most of the heavy stuff behind, and you can do this whilst wide awake. In fact, the bit more awake you are, the better it works. You need to do nothing more than breathe properly, sit straight, shut your eyes, and your friends can take you on a journey. It's very easy to go off at that point. So over to you. What questions about the difference between the two?
I just curious about the when you say the guides. So our spirit guides then would step up and help us move out.
Yeah.
Now, if my vibration wasn't high enough to have that type of close relationship with my guides yet, let's say, do we have to be trained to bring our vibration up, to be more sensitive to our guides and be able to communicate with them much better than I guess the average person without any connection with guides? I shouldn't say that. It's a bad way of phrasing the question, but it's the is it easier to when you teach this to get somebody with a higher vibration astral project than those who are having a hard time communicating with that part of themselves, I guess.
Right. So there are many points there, but to try and get the simple one, anyone who's interested in this subject can do it. And in terms of managing to do it, I too would have been one of the average guys muddling through, hoping for something to happen. And what happened for me was I just spent enough time and persistence at this until I managed to astrally get a link with my guiding spirits, and at that point they took over the training. So instead of me muddling through, they started to explain how it was done and teach me the refinements that made it all work much more smoothly and much more easily. So we're all really average people, and we can all be taught how to do it. The only real prerequisite is that we're interested enough to give it a go. That's it.
Yeah, what's the easiest way to step into that? Let's stick with the light astral projection. The lead, not tugging that heavy meat sack or the heavy energy with you, the light stuff, because that's where I think it is going to be more advantageous, I think, to people, especially the ones that are tuning in tonight to want to hear about your experience in the other worlds. The higher energy states that we should be in, is that really when you guys are training people, how do you switch into that higher energy state?
Well,
or how do you teach that?
Let me catch something near the end of your statement. You said a higher energy state we should be in, and then I'm going to work backwards from that. Well, we assume sometimes we should be in a higher energy state, but perhaps that's not quite the case. We've all come here to experience being in a low energy world. So to a very large extent, we will want to experience a low energy, very compelling human experience. That's what we've come here to do. The high energy state would be switching back to where you've come from, a normality, but it's rather like saying we're on the middle of some fairground ride. Are you wanting to switch out of it and turn it off? And the answer to that is most of the time, no. Most of the time you're wanting to experience the low energy state, and that's why you're in it, even though it's a bit disjointing. To go into then the high energy state version, if you just stop pushing yourself into the low energy state and you stop doing all the things that hold you into that low energy state, your natural condition then goes into the high one. That's what happens. People are very often trying to push themselves into astral projections, and really when it comes down to training them is, metaphorically speaking, slap them around the head until they stop trying to push their consciousness out of the body, and they just learn to relax, stop entertaining the low energy vibrations, and when they stop doing that, their consciousness naturally floats free, and they discover or rediscover they were a high energy being all along. So training really helps doing this, because like anything in life, you've got to reprogram the brain. I'll just give you a very simple example. I mean, how long does it take us to learn to read? Or how long does it take us to learn to drive an automobile? And these things always happen faster if someone sits beside you, talks you through what you're doing, and gives you useful feedback. So if you have someone with you doing this, it can even be on a Skype connection. It's quite easy to do. When someone else who knows how it's done is with you and is watching what is going on, they'll just show you the techniques, talk you through the simple mistakes, and it turns out to be much easier than you thought. And it's as straightforward to that. A bit of one-to-one training, you'll get there very fast. If you want to do group training in a whole room full of people, you'll get less one-to-one attention, and then you'll go slower. It's probably best to liken astral projection training as being similar to learning to fly an aircraft. if you have one student with one instructor going off in the same aircraft, they'll learn very quickly, and it'll also be quite easy to do because the techniques are in fact second nature to you. You merely have to refresh that memory. So again, is that answering that question?
It is. I've got one from the chat room here that Claudia was saying that she had a panel of beings sitting at a table with her, giving her tons of information for a week every night. And at the end of the week, I said, my brain is so full, and asked them to stop. I always wondered why they shared so much with her. I don't know if you could answer that, but is that, again, this is a contact she had, and because I don't know Claudia and to talk about this, but I'm passing on the question to her, to you. I don't know if that's was something like that happen to you. Why did beings come to you and say, "Okay, here's your download. This is the information we're passing on to you"? Is that kind of what happened to you?
I think that'll happen to nearly everyone who gets into this field, and they will have a similar experience of realizing that they'll soon get overloaded with information, and you still have to pay attention to functioning in a physical world and then make use of that information. So perhaps someone like me who's written it all down, it is a result of what happens when you have that information overload. You ultimately have to write a book or two on the subject just to clear it from your system.
There you go, Claudia. Grab a pen and paper. You have to go. She was also asking why her dream, it's her dream state that it's easy to astral travel.
You could do it from a dream state, and I've had interesting astral experiences on the dream state, but it's not the most efficient way of doing it. There are better techniques. If dream states is all you've got to work with for the moment, so be it. But I'll say again, there are much better ways of getting this to work. And if you get it to work in the more fun, dynamic ways, afterwards you won't be too worried about dream states or not, because you'll have easier and more reliable ways of doing it.
Now, astral travel seems very interesting, and I interview a lady Noreen Rainier, who is a psychic that helped police and the FBI do certain things, and she would get invited, and I talked to Elizabeth England on the pre-show about this. She would be invited every year to a conference of retired CIA people who were doing a remote viewing and astral projection. And she kind of did her remote viewing differently than they did. So they'd invite her, and she'd talk about how she would kind of leave her body and go to where they went. But so that was their job. The government taught them that. Again, with Noreen, she taught herself. She's very psychic that way. But why would we, and the collective we, want to learn to astral project?
Well, we're all a bit bored here in lots of ways. We have a feeling that there's a much more dynamic universe than the one we're experiencing. And we all inherently realize that there are a lot of beings out there, call them guiding spirits or deceased relatives, who we want to visit and interact with. And I'll give you a practical example of this. When I was training other people how to do it back around the end of the 1990s, beginning of this millennium, one of the characters we used to go and say hello to in the astral world was my son-to-be, who would appear as a small boy of school age. And with clients who I was practicing with, we'd say hello to him, ask him what life was like, get a sense of what he was like as a character. For example, I wanted to know if he was going to be the next genius in this world. I'd say, son, are you going to be an Einstein? That would be great, because you'll make me a very proud father. And the guy replied back, sorry, Dad, I'm going to be a slow learner to begin with. And that's the way it is. I'll be very sensitive to things, but I'm not going to be that intellectually sharp, but I'll catch up in the end, so it'll be all right. Anyway, subsequently, many years later, when he got born, at about 18 months, he was diagnosed with autism. And indeed, he is a slow learner in school, but he gets there in the end and has a lot of specialized skills. So in terms of astrally projecting and meeting characters, you can get a sense of, in this case, of what's coming. So I met my son, I understood what his character was going to be like, and then after he'd been born and the pediatrician said, I'm sorry, Mr. McCready, your son's autism, is that a shock to you? I replied back, well, frankly, no, because he told me years ago, and I knew about it, that something was going to be the case. So I met my son, I met his younger sister, who we also started showing up with, and she demonstrated how she'd have a much sharper intellect. And indeed, now she's alive on Earth. That's exactly how she is. And finally, they also demonstrated a vision of who their mother was going to be. And they showed quite clearly what kind of person she was, a lot of her physical features. So I had a pretty good idea of what Mum was going to look like, even though it came with a caveat that much as I could see this vision of Mum, when I met her, somehow things were going to be different. And indeed, that turned out to be the case. When I got together with my wife-to-be, she looked nothing like the vision, because what had been going on was another aspect of her, shall we say a spirit aspect of her, like a slice of personality, was in the astral world but hadn't hooked into its physical body. So I'd begun a relationship with this spirit aspect of my wife, and then when she finally got the physical body round, she then connected into her physical body and transformed it to begin to look like this very attractive blondie woman. So she literally changed shape, changed everything about her in a styling way, to the point at which when we went back to meet her mother, so Mum got to meet the new fiancé, Mum looked her daughter up and down and ultimately said if it hadn't been for the fact her daughter was showing up on the right day at the right time, she wouldn't have recognized her own daughter. Such a transformation had happened. So
that's amazing.
In terms of astral projection stuff, you can meet the beings that are coming into this world, and when you've got a loved one who's departed this world, you can still say hello to them and see how they're doing, and they'll often look back on you now and again and give you a few useful thoughts. So it's a much more dynamic, natural environment, and really the way to go. And that's why you're having shows such as this, is to remind people to do it. Don't give up. Persist. If you practice on your own, you'll get there. If you get a bit of training, you'll get there faster. But whatever way, persist. Relearn these skills. They're very natural, and on other advanced worlds, they'd be second nature.
Yeah. That's I find the entire topic absolutely fascinating, because I want to get there. I want to get into the position where I can do this, and I think it'll just come down to allowing myself to, basically take your lessons and allowing myself and doing some practice and moving on. It's one of those fascinating subjects that I've always thought about ever since I was in high school in the late 70s, where I met two kids I went to high school with who had a book on this, and they had told their younger sister, who I was in my grade, that they actually did astral travel. And you kind of, back in the late 70s, mid 70s, you kind of look at them with one eyebrow raised, thinking, what are you, nuts? But it's been around for a long time. We've been doing it. It's no, go please.
The astral projection is a very natural function, and to make use of it, it's simply a case of just learning the techniques. Everyone does a minor astral projection every time their body falls asleep. So all you're learning how to do is harness a natural feature and just upgrading it a bit and turning it into something useful. It's as straightforward as that. There's no real complication to it.
So, if just for the people who don't know this, but I'll ask you anyway. If you had a really long day, you go to bed and you've been astral projecting all night long, do you wake up absolutely beat, or does it affect you? Does it make you tired?
A misplaced assumption there.
Yes.
If I've had a very long day and I'm absolutely beat, I'd crash into bed, probably have dreams worrying and thinking about the things that were annoying me during the day. And there'd be no useful astral projection. Whereas by comparison, if I was doing a lot of astral work during the day, say meeting clients and taking them through it, because what would happen is during the day when I'm with a client, I go astrally projecting with them, because that's how we teach them. It's like two people going off in the same aircraft doing flying lessons. We go up, we go down, we go and visit interesting places, but we go together, because that way the student gets the all-important feedback, and the teacher at the same time picks up new things they wouldn't have otherwise spotted, because the student will always see stuff the teacher might not have picked up on. So it's a two-way beneficial process. So if I was doing a lot of that during the day, I really wouldn't be too bothered or worried about doing another burst of it at night. I'd say, let's just switch off here.
Yeah, that's
to whatever land.
Yeah, it's your work day. Leave work at work.
Yeah. Yes.
Go have a dream about something else. What have you ever? Now we're going to get into this in the next hour. Your experiences with other beings, but have you ever come back and kind of jotted down and drawn what they look like, and we'll get into the encyclopedia you put together too. But that was just a question that came up.
Yes, the answer is yes. I've had a go at drawing it, but unfortunately, my drawing skills are very badly developed. And I'll give you a good example of what happened. When I was at school, approximately 12 years old, I was informed that I had a choice between learning how to work with wood or developing my artistic skills. And it seemed more important to do woodwork than it was to learn the artistic skills. But there was considerable disappointment in that. So what happened was I did woodwork class and I was very good at it, and then turned it into a profession. I turned myself into an engineer and did lots of construction and dealt with many complex things. But my artistic skill was never really developed. So I have the artistic skill of someone perhaps aged 8 to 10. So my drawing is rubbish. And with the alien worlds, I have made bad drawings of what some of them look like. But going forward, what I'm endeavoring to do right now is train an illustrator how to travel to them, and then together we'll get him drawing it up, and if it looks like he's made a bad job of it, I'll say so to him and he can improve the illustration. And if that guy doesn't work out, we'll simply find someone else. So if there's anyone out there who wants to be a potential illustrator for this, go onto my website and email me, because if the original guy doesn't make it, there's a free slot and someone will get free training and we'll show you how to get there. And it's going to take physically weeks out of your life, but you'll end up with some amazing skills, and you will see them, and you'll have to draw them out, and we'll put them into the next edition of the encyclopedia, because that's obviously the next thing to do.
And amazing experiences.
Yeah.
As opposed to you drawing everything with a pencil in T-squares.
Yeah, it'd be terrible. I was wondering, I was actually doing a bit of a sketch, sitting beside a client one day, and then both of us looked down on the sketch, and he got the words out before me, and he said, "You've mucked it up, haven't you?" And I said, "Yes, I have." And he then was pointing out to me, and I could only agree with him, where I'd misdrawn the body shape But having done a bad version of it, we could both see straight away where it was wrong.
Yeah.
So when people have time, they get sort of experience, and there's a huge amount of common ground. So it needs someone who...
Sorry, go ahead.
Go on.
You need someone who...
it needs someone who opted for the art class instead of going off to woodwork and subsequently engineering.
Unless someone's really good at wood carving and sculpture with a chainsaw and a tree. When you're going with somebody like that, can you see each other?
Well, there's an interesting point. When you say see each other, what do you think a listener would understand by that? Just to build up the context before I answer it.
Can look over your shoulder and know that somebody's with you, or that I could look over my shoulder and say, okay, David's there.
Yeah. Well, we assume in the earthly sense that we all look very human shape. If you're doing heavy astral projection, everything still looks human shape. When you do a lighter astral projection, the human shape is down there, but you've left it behind. And at that point, everyone looks like an energy form. And these energy forms start to overlap and are interconnected with other energy forms. So when you're doing a lot of lighter astral projection, you would be aware that there's another energy form with you. You can feel it. You can see it to whatever extent you want to look at it. They're very often rather like a couple of pilots in an aircraft. They're looking out the window rather than looking at each other. But you know they're there, and it's easy enough to spot them. So you're going into worlds where you're switching out of the human form and you're dropping into other places. For example, in North America, I recall on many occasions there was a group of North American Indians who would keep inviting us back to come and sit with them around their fire of an evening, and their medicine man would invite us into their little environment. So I'd feel myself with client often arriving in that environment, and they used to like us to sort of show up at first in the flames. That seemed to be their starting point. So we'd start there, and then they'd invite us into their bodies and experience a lot of their memories, the feelings of what it was like to be them. So we'd go into them, and the medicine man would show how he would absorb our presences, and similarly then the young braves, occasionally women, but there seemed to be more male-dominated, had to be said, would allow our presences to go into their bodies. So we'd switch in, and yes, you'd experience knowing someone was with you, but you wouldn't always be staring at them. And if you were doing astral projection together and the other person wasn't with you, then you weren't going to get the required results. These would always be shared journeys, not single journeys.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Over to you.
Yeah, that's brilliant. We're going to come back with more from David McCready. Again, go to his website at www.greatsimulator.com. Again, greatsimulator.com. And we're going to be back with more from David. We'll throw a commercial on, and then we'll be right back right after this.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Hi there, this is Elizabeth Anglin, and on the last Monday of every month, I join Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's Cosmic Passport. We delve into everything from extraterrestrial contact to animal communication. It's a lot of fun, and every month it's something different and exciting. I would love it if you would join us. You can hear and learn from my experiences, and I'd like to know about yours as well. Cosmic Passport on spacedoutradio.com.
Fairies? Bigfoot? Dogmen? Trolls? Goblins? Hey, if it's cryptid in any way, I'm looking into it. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, also known as Spaced Out Radio's Crypto Guru. Join me every second Wednesday of the month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will talk about the stories people call tall tales. I will fill you in on the latest sightings and the hidden histories that are causing quite a stir. You can find everything at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is your medium Joanna from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Is the 24-hour world starting to wear you down? Let me from Rivulet Reiki and Ratings lend you a hand. Hi, this is Jolene, and if you're in need of Reiki or a room reading, come to my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr, and let us help you out. At Rivulet, I specialize in healing your body, mind, and soul, no matter where you are. And be sure to check out the Rivulet R&R Facebook page for your best deals. Remember, it's time for you to make some time for you.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month, where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Spaced Out Weekend with James Tyson can be found at spacedoutradio.com. Head to our website where you can join the Space Travelers and sign up for your new membership. You can also follow James on Twitter at JamesTysonSOR. Now, back to our paranormal guru, James Tyson.
Welcome back, everybody. We are with David McCready. As I told you, I don't know if everyone did this, go to his website, greatsimulator.com, and look at the books that he's written. And I'm going to be getting a couple of those books, and we're going to be giving it out. I'm putting them in the vault to be given out to the Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers group once we get that thing up and running on our website. Now, I see, before we start off here with all my questions that I have for David, I'm going to go back. We have the Claudia Alice Way show, which is, she's got a number of questions coming up here. What message, David, she's asking if you remember any very, very important messages that you were given on the other side that you'd like to share. Oh, good.
And she used to go and visit the most wretched slums in Dublin. Many people didn't even seem to know what a bar of soap looked like. Yeah? Sorry, had I disappeared? Where had you... I'll explain it again. So,
okay, sorry everybody. I just noticed that David did a quick astro travel when he was actually answering the question about bringing back some very important message. Can I get you to go over that again, David? Sorry.
Okay. Yes, the first point of the message we were talking about is a very simple one for human beings, which is to learn to breathe properly again. Relearn how to breathe properly so that your diaphragm functions and you can breathe lower into your body instead of all this chest breathing we normally do. And if you learn to breathe properly, your human energy system will work better. And when it does, you'll find yourself connecting to nature spirits on the ground and the higher energies above. And when this happens, things like clairvoyance and astral projection all become much, much easier. So get your breathing working properly. That is the way forward in terms of a simple message. In terms of a message about mankind and developing, it's helpful to go from the direction of an experience my mother had when she was growing up as a medical student in Ireland. So she was learning to be a doctor, and as part of learning to be a doctor, she was sent out to help deliver babies in the slums of Dublin. And these slums were very wretched. Some households hardly knew what a bar of soap looked like. They could be living in some really poor conditions. And she did say that over the years, what made the biggest difference was the advent of television, because even people in the poorest homes all wanted to have a TV. And once they got a TV, they started looking into other worlds. And when they saw these other worlds, they realized that many people had much cleaner and tidier lives, and that this seemed to have a huge social impact. And she said it was the advent of television that turned around people's lives, and all their living conditions seemed to improve merely because they knew how the other half lived, so to speak. So to take this in terms of a message for human beings, the way we live on Earth at the moment is one where the ultimate answer to most human problems is to kill the person who's annoying you. And that's the way it's perceived. But wouldn't it be good to look into other worlds where they've got past that and they've discovered new mechanisms for running their societies and different social models that would be very usefully translated onto Earth? I mean, what would you think about that, James?
Oh, I think it would be brilliant. It's one of those things that, we all talk about, everyone holding hands and singing, but because we all have individual personalities, it's, there's that ego and competition. It's getting ego and letting go of that. And I think that would bring a lot of us, bring all of us together if we didn't have that competition and our ego.
So when we look at these more advanced alien worlds, it's almost like having access to a sort of portal into them. You start to see how they are organizing society and the mechanism they use for it. And one of the things you put in the book was how they create what you might call a kind of sub-god. And it's really a collective consciousness where they all contribute to an energy that helps guide them. So ultimately, the whole universe has the same central God. All human beings are extensions of that central God. All alien beings are an extension of that central God or super consciousness. We're all one. They don't see it as any different. But locally, you can add to it by creating your own intermediate super consciousness energy or godly energy, feeding into it, and it then starts to guide you as a community. So if you want to do something, all of your community is feeding into that energy, and it feeds back as to how you should achieve your objectives, how to do it in a collective way, instead of fighting with each other and trying to show who's the strongest or the best. So this is a wonderful innovation. I'm very badly describing right now, but at least making mention that it's out there. And every time you look at a more advanced alien world, you will find they have all contributed towards collective consciousness that helps guide them in a much healthier way than we would experience on Earth. Over to you.
Which gets us into the next, what we want to touch on in this next and last hour is the curiosity that I have and my listener has with and I want to call them just the beings that you've encountered. And also what you've put together as the encyclopedia on these different interactions and your recordings of them. What tell us our first the first group. We'll start at the ones that actually came in and began to connect with you right at the beginning, and Doc and things like and beings like him.
Well, they weren't, technically speaking, the first group at all, but I'll put a context. In the astral projection skills, for many years, there'd been the occasional foray into alien worlds on the basis that people had previous incarnations there. And often their families from that world were messaging back to this one, say, hey, come and visit us, the conditions are right. So we would go and visit and we'd have a look into these worlds. So it wasn't a new thing. But what gave a big step change in that was that one night, David, there I was lying in bed and I was woken up by feeling incredibly cold. And from past experience of mucking about with bad, heavy astral projections, I knew when you feel incredibly cold, it's because part of your spirit being has perhaps got left somewhere else, or you've lost it. And when people feel cold like that, if they were dying, for example, they'd have the expression of going cold from the inside out, because their spirit body's leaving physical bodies soon going to die. And so I'd done some of that astrally by accident one day and felt what it was like to sort of not quite kill yourself, but lose some of your spirit body. And in this context, there I was one night lying in bed, and I realized I was hemorrhaging some of my spirit body. I was going, what is going on? And I looked across to a guiding spirit who I was used to working with, or a human-looking character, and I said, am I in trouble here? What's happening? And he said, no, it's fine. There's just a little process going on. Just bear with it. So I lay there in bed, getting colder and colder and colder, until I was huddled up in a sort of fetal ball. That's where you're sort of almost trying to curl up within yourself under the duvet, shaking hard with physical shivering, because I felt really frozen. And I could feel how my spirit body was being emptied out. And at the very sort of pit, the bottom of this whole thing, I suddenly got the impression that my consciousness was simultaneously in a laboratory room. And if you can picture sitting on the edge of a physician's couch, say sitting up on the edge of it, and there's a doctor in front of you, putting their fingers in front of your eyes, saying, can you see? Have you got vision? I thought, this is weird, I'm somewhere else. And also the other people at that location look a touch alien. What is going on? And then around that moment, the whole process was thrown into reverse. There were some strange energetic flashes that came through my head, so it's like bursts of light in my eyes. And then the heat and warmth was gradually returned to my body over the next half hour. And what was going on was some of the old version of David was removed, not all of him, obviously, or he'd have died. And there were some new elements brought in from another world, some new spirit body aspects put in. And so I got up the next morning and described this to the wife. She said, well, you look the same to me. And I said, yeah, something's been changed over, and now it'll be left to set for a couple of days, apparently, which is sure enough what happened. And after a few days then, I found that the David body had the equivalent of his internet connection upgraded. So if you can think beforehand, it would have been a rather old dial phone connection to other worlds. After the upgrade, it was like broadband fiber optic cable had been installed. And it was much easier to link into alien worlds, and it was much easier to help get other people to them too. So an enormous upgrade had been started, and it was this character, the Doc, who at his end was running the experiment with a few of his friends, showing how they were going to link into the human world, demonstrating how it's done.
Oh, brilliant.
Over to you.
Yeah, it's just brilliant. And now I'd like you to tell her, I've posted the links on your website for joining and getting it, and there's signing up and actually becoming a member and supporting your page and tapping into that free book that you have, or portion of the free book, or and so I've posted that, and I've got my listener out doing that right now, logging in, and your encyclopedia, you've done this enough now that you've gained knowledge of numbers of these beings and these worlds, and you've put it into an encyclopedia, and that is one of your portion of good chunk of one of your books. And in fact, the Doc you described as a grasshopper, and it is in chapter E01 of the encyclopedia. What the heck is a grasshopper? When you say grasshopper, what do you mean by that?
Well, when we were visiting him one day, and his friends, because he was also helping other friends on that world link up with the human world. So it wasn't just him linking with David. There were his pals linking with other human beings. And when you visit alien worlds, you'll be struck by the fact that many of these beings bear some similarities to life forms on Earth, but the evolutionary process has taken a different direction. And in particular, many alien beings are fundamentally insects. For example, the grey species of aliens that visit Earth are mostly insects. There's different versions of them that have been grown on different planets, but they are basically insects. They're exoskeletal, so they have hard shells and softer interiors. And in the case of this Doc character, my client, who was linking up with one of his pals, said they look like grasshoppers. And I thought that was really quite a good analogy, and hence that's how it got into the book. They were described as a sort of variation of grasshoppers, except they're about 2 meters tall typically, which is a bit bigger than a human being, and they're the flying version of them. And they also like to walk around as bipeds, given the opportunity, as opposed to scuttling around on the ground. So they fly like a bird would, but given the opportunity when they're landed, then they like to walk around as bipeds and use their front limbs for handling equipment or machinery and things of that sort. Right. So this is what you find, that they are very much like species that you'd have a loose familiarity with on Earth. It's not like they're a complete shock.
Yeah, Dave Scott, who does his show from Monday to Friday, has an experience with a being that he calls a mantis. So basically, it would be like yours, like grasshopper mantis. They're pretty darn close.
There are a lot of beings out there. If you look at all the stars and millions of worlds out there, and then add into this that there are multiple dimensions. So, for example, we're here on Earth. There are multiple dimensions of Earth. If you wanted to meet some aliens, just go up one dimension and you'd find a whole different set of Earthlings living on the same planet. There are multiple dimensions to planets. There's more than one universe when you really go looking. So there are so many of these beings, endless possibilities. You can find more or less anything conceivable. So a mantis type character, I've not personally met, but I'd be surprised if there wasn't one.
Yeah. What are the? Can you kind of go through the list of the ones that you have met?
Well, we've met a lot of the grade type aliens, so we picked some representative examples of them because there were more of them to visit than could reasonably be put into a book. The book that we've got runs to about 500 pages and took about 2 years to research, and that was really a compromise of what could be done to get a start on this project and produce a book that showed the representative species. So there are many forms of greys out there. We also encountered a lot of aliens who are much more human-like, and you could break them into different categories. Some of the alien visitors to Earth are humans from the future coming back in to say hello, so you need to recognize them as such. Then there are other beings that are really the human design, but they've been grown from scratch on other planets. And sometimes as well, you get human beings from Earth who've been then mixed with the DNA of other alien human beings, and that produces another slice of them. So you get a huge variation of them. To go on with some of them as well, you get some beings out there that don't look like human beings at all. So, for example, we looked at some that are sea creatures. And another example we really had to look into was, could we find a world where dinosaurs had become the top species? And indeed, we were shown a very good representative world, but in this case, not so advanced as the ones, say, of the Doc's world. Going back into the dinosaur world, we were shown something that looked a bit like 18th and 19th century Europe. And it was really like a forest planet where you had the dinosaurs who lived in the forest could link with Earth astrally, whereas their more industrialized and intellectualized counterparts who deforested the northern and southern parts of the planet didn't know how to do it. They'd lost that skill. The other forms of aliens worth mentioning are the ones who are helping to engineer the worlds we live in. And near the back of the encyclopedia, you'll find categories of aliens who look loosely humanoid, but they spend their days helping to set up the very worlds we're living in. They spend their days building planets and places of that sort. And you might think, are they very advanced? Do they do it in a lofty way all day? And not so. It's almost like they're setting up computer games that they can then reach into. So you know how on Earth we enjoy having computer games and setting up these environments. These advanced aliens enjoy creating physical worlds and setting up the species on them, and then they can come and have lives here. And this is a very important message for so many human beings on Earth. You might see yourself fundamentally as a being that's perhaps less advanced, but that's not really the case. Many people experiencing life on Earth have come from more advanced worlds, and they now are wanting to experience a primitive world to see if they can bring those advances into the primitive environment. And I'm sure many readers will feel like that. It's like there's something more to what's going on. What is it that's happening to us? Why don't we know more? Why can't we do more? And that's because we do have latent memories of more advanced worlds. And you're probably a being from an advanced world who's now come into the primitive world, coming here to enlighten it. So what thoughts on this as I describe some of what we've encountered?
I'm finding it in the last, for me, since 2012, I've been, we'll say I had an awakening to more of the higher vibration, the higher energies, the spirit world, connecting to things that at one point I'd never thought existed. And I've spoken to a lot of other people, and I've interviewed people that said, in the last 5 to 10 years, there are more of us awakening to understanding that there are other things out there and other energies that we can interact with. Are you finding that in your work too over the last 5 years? Has there been a big increase in people stepping forward and saying, look, I'm very interested in what you're doing and I want to experience more?
I need add nothing to what you've said.
Yeah,
you've described it perfectly.
Okay, what is the reason unless you've been told what the reason is, and I'm going to ask you that, have you been told what the reason for that is, or do you have a theory on that yourself?
Well, what has been shown to me is that this era is where the earthlings start to wake up. Instead of walking around all the time thinking that they're isolated and alone, through things like astral projection and better reporting of alien physical contacts, it becomes quite plain that they're not alone, and they start to pay attention to the greater universe around them and how the rest of the universe lives. So there's this huge awakening going on. It's happening in multiple ways all at once. And just to bring you back to something that's very obvious but overlooked, if you think that for thousands of years on Earth, we had very simple technologies of first Stone Age and then using fire and metal tools, but just in the last couple of 100 years, endless ideas have been dropped into human heads out of nowhere. Now, humans might think they've invented everything themselves because they're very clever, or you could say that ideas and advances have been dropped into human minds and suddenly they know how to do stuff. I'll take a really simple example. Take someone who was born about 100 years ago, Albert Einstein. He had visions of how matter functioned. He got these visions. You might say he was doing a form of astral projection where he suddenly understood how matter operated, and he was able to write out some formulas, and from that we then had an understanding of how nuclear power worked. We understand the relationship between energy and matter, and really physical matter just turns out to be energy. This was all seen, and things like these ideas were dropped into people's heads. The guy who invented quantum physics described it as if someone had let off a light bulb in his head. Now, he didn't question where that light bulb came from, but he experienced it. So realize here on Earth, all these ideas and advances have been dropped into humans' heads, and just ordinary people are getting them. It's happening in a very everyday way. And look at the way our society is advancing in leaps and bounds. We've now become very technologically advanced, and coming up as a sort of second runner, people saying we also need to spiritually and emotionally advance as well. And they're feeling the need to do it, and bit by bit we are doing it. We're living in the most exciting era. And isn't it wonderful to be alive here and be dropping into bodies where we can do this, and bring children in who also want to do it as well, more sensitive, capable children who take on where their parents have left off. It's really a wonderful time to be alive. Don't you think so, James?
I do, and what you've just gone over has percolated a number of questions that I'll be throwing your way right after our last break.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on 2 mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in. and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. 2 mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners, for only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott. Join me Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com, where we delve into all things paranormal, supernatural, extraterrestrial, crypto, and all topics in between. Come on by, take a listen, and tell us about your experiences. We are here for the answers you need. Spaced Out Radio, broadcasting right out of this world.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle. Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
With an ever-expanding listenership base, Spaced Out Radio is the perfect place for you to advertise your product. Our listeners support those who sponsor this show. So whether you're an author or a company, Spaced Out Radio is the perfect place for you. Our pricing is more than competitive, and your advertisements will be seen and heard every show. Head to spacedoutradio.com and advertise with us today. Contact us at info@spacedoutradio.com today.
Tonight's edition of Spaced Out Weekend is brought to you by spacedoutradio.com, where you can now sign up to become a Space Traveler member. Now, for the final time tonight, here's Spaced Out Weekend's James Tyson.
Welcome back, everybody. I am here with David McCready, and I'm absolutely fascinated. It's before we went off there, we went for the break. Things started percolating here, and I'm going to drag him down. I'm dragging you down, David, into find out exactly what you think of the things that we hear a lot in the public of a group of bad aliens called the Reptilians. Have you experienced anything like that, or is that what is your opinion on something like that, or that group, if they exist?
I was looking at a presentation by David Icke, who was talking about the reptilians influencing earthly minds. I thought, well, we've got all the skills to go and look. So that would be interesting to do. And I'd also mention, again, and reiterate, that this is a two-way thing. If the reptilians didn't want you to know about their world, they would block you out to a large extent. But in this case, the reptilians seemed quite inviting, that we could go and see their world. So we got an invite to go and have a look round. And what we found was a caste society where the reptilians would be genetically growing more stupid elements of society to do a lot of the more manual and menial tasks. And then at the other end, they were growing some very intelligent, bright characters, more like the scientists and top artists and inventors. And in the upper echelons of reptilian society, we found that they enjoyed visiting other worlds and sometimes playing with more primitive life forms. And in this context, the Earth was an environment that these reptilians enjoyed fiddling around with. They saw this as a bit of practical joking, having a bit of fun, seeing if you could tweak the minds of human beings and tinker with their belief systems and tinker with their behavior. So indeed, there was a bunch of reptilians playing around, but at no point did I find everyone doing it in a malevolent way. But their game would be to try and make human beings think that it was malevolent. And they further came up with an interesting proposition, which was David Icke, according to them, was made aware of reptilians because they, in a higher, more angelic way, had told him about it. They'd shown him that they were up to stuff and then allowed him to investigate it. And it was rather as if he'd been shown what was happening, but not entirely got the point that they were running a rather large practical joke. So this reptilian world is somewhere that many of the researchers I've worked with have visited, and we all found the same thing. It was reptilians having a bit of fun, rather in the same way perhaps children might poke a stick at an ant's nest, but not to destroy it, just to see how the little ants would react, just gauge their responses. They don't want to wreck the place. They just want to see what the response is. Okay, what are your thoughts?
Is there any malevolent group of beings that are showing up here, stirring the pot, as it were?
There are a lot of beings stirring the pot, but I've yet to find anyone who was malevolent. And in this context, you've further got to realize that, as we said before, beings who live on other worlds come and visit the Earth. Human beings who sometimes find themselves experimented on Earth inevitably seem to have some other lifetime connection with the people who are running the experiments. So we're an integrated society, but on Earth we're afflicted by a massive amnesia that makes us see ourselves as separate and different. Well, that's fundamentally wrong. We're all part of a much bigger universal community. That's the reality of the situation. Thinking yourself as isolated on Earth is a fundamental mistake, and it's really time to snap out of that, and we're in an era where we are snapping out of it. There's a big step change in our understanding of the greater reality of who we are and what we are. I mean, you must have come across this before in other forms, James.
Yes, I think it's the it's just arrogance. Or I shouldn't say arrogance. Again, we're leaning back to that ego.
Yes,
you know, we as the alleged highest, you know, group of animals on this planet are still perceiving that we're the highest group in the universe because, you know, we have all this cool stuff. We have video games and milkshakes. So, you know, what other planet could do something like that? We're the best. Well, smarten up. You know, get your head out of your collective butts. We're be a little more humble and open your eyes, and you'll see a lot more.
If you look at what happens with most alien visitations, it's the equivalent of a scientist putting their hand down into a plastic container with a few lab rats down there. And human beings would be the equivalent of lab rats. The alien visitors come in, pick up the rats, do a few experiments, pop them back where they found them, put the lid back on that plastic container, and leave the lab rats where they are. So human beings should recognize this, that other beings are stepping in and out of our world with ease, and they come and go as they like. I'll give you a quote in point that I got given third hand, but a reader of the Great Alien World's Encyclopaedia, she had one day had dinner with a base commander from Area 51. And she was thrilled. And she said, "Are there really aliens out there? Have they come and gone?" And she said, the guy said, yes, there were plenty of aliens. Some are nice, some are less nice, as you described, that you can appear to be more malevolent when they show up. But he said, they come and go pretty much as they please. And that's the way it is for us on Earth. These beings are coming and going because they're coming from more advanced worlds. But at the same time, they're helping human beings catch up. So it's not like we're eternally stuck here. And they are, in this era, helping us come up to speed with the astral skills so we can look into their worlds and see how they live and get a much better perspective on what's really going on. And good shows such as yours are helping remind human beings that they can learn these skills. It's within reach. You can do it. It just takes a bit of training.
Yeah, and that's what Dave Scott, who put the show together, wanted it to be. He believed that he was directed to do this, and because it's time. And again, like my awakening was in 2012. Do you think that year was a real shift, or was it before that?
Well, for me it was a shift, but in a rather annoying kind of a way. Before 2012, I was pretty good at predicting what would happen in the future. And what I noticed was you could see energetic forces lining up. So, for example, I could see the children who were going to come to me. I could see who was going to be my wife-to-be. And it was just a case of getting everything together, crossing the I's and dotting the T's. After 2012, I suddenly noticed that in terms of predicting the future, I was out of business because the future had gone ridiculously unpredictable. And you could steer things along to some extent, but you had to realize that the future kept changing. We'd entered a very different environment where perhaps some big things were going to happen, but as to most of the details, we were then beginning to have a real hand on how we'd shape our environment. So yes, we'd entered a very new environment where in your human body, you are influencing things on a global scale. Don't underestimate that. Everyone is playing a part. It's a very exciting time to live. It's good that you're doing a show like this, James, because you're helping people along.
Yeah, that's the point, giving people a chance who have experienced things to hear similar experiences from other people and not keeping it all to themselves and thinking that they're odd and trying to block it. It's just very natural as it's coming. So as we grind down to the end of our show, I need to throw my stock questions out on you, and one of them is something that Claudia Alice was wanting to is, have you ever been introduced to a past life in your connect with your beings?
Many times, and it comes in many forms. To add a bit of context to this, we all feel we're one human being having one past life. In fact, the human body is a vehicle, and multiple operators can use that vehicle. So it's a bit like a computer game where the people playing the characters in the game can change. So you'll have a character in that game, Joe Bloggs, Joe Smith, but different people can play it being Joe. They can climb in and out of his physical form. And past lives are really connected to the latent memories of those players. And yes, I've experienced many past life memories and connections. The first one I ever encountered took me about 10 years to get over, and that was the equivalent of getting part of my head sliced off by something that was probably an axe or a large sword in battle. And I then had a past life memory of dying under violent circumstances for about 10 years, where every time something brought something near my head, I would flinch because I'd recovered the memory. Fortunately, most of the subsequent memories have tended to be a little bit lighter. So past life memories on living on Earth, a lot of them bits of dying moments, dying in the Battle of Waterloo, getting shot in the Battle of Berlin were a couple of examples, getting riddled with machine gun bullets and then what it's like to die. But then going in other directions, we've realized that because we have this link into alien worlds, it's possible to link into their bodies and experience life on their planets. And when you do things like that, you begin to question what constitutes a sort of past life or a future life, because actually everyone can plug into anything else. There are common connections which are very strong, but there are also a lot of other connections you can link into almost everyone's and anyone's lives if you so wished. So it's an enormously dynamic subject. So I hope now I've left more questions than were originally posed by your first one. How are we doing on that?
It's brilliant. To come up with a statement that generates more questions, I love that, because I can send them all to your website. thegreatsimulator.com. What do you believe? Have you ever seen a ghost?
What do you mean by a ghost?
A spirit, a past, and I mean what? Because I'm a paranormal investigator, and I've heard them speaking, and I've seen them when I was 16. I was in a bad car accident, and I saw the children that were killed in the other car walking around with their dad.
Wow.
So I'm not. That's what I mean. The spirit energy of somebody who's passed.
Well, part of the training that the guiding spirits who work with the David body, if I describe in the third person, part of the training they gave David was to teach him how to help ghosts into the heavens. So there was plenty of saying ghosts. And looking at it in another direction, one of my friends from the heavens, in a ghostly way, is a dog I once had. He looked like a black Alsatian when he was alive. But now, say, for example, when we're having this chat today and asking about ghosts, he showed up. But in the heavens, he likes to show up as a slightly small version of a human being with dark hair, and says hello to that. He can put on his dog costume if he wants, because he realizes he can change outfits, whether they look like dog or humans. But he reckons a human one is a bit more fun, and it just tweaks me. So if you're saying, do I see ghosts? Well, I'm looking at one right now on my left-hand side, and there he is playing with his human or dog costume as required to entertain your listeners.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. What do you think happens to our energy when our meat sack fails to exist, when we die?
When you die, it's a case of taking that soul energy, that very bright core of you, lifting it out and peeling off a lot of the bits of human personality. So there's a kind of dispersal. The real you has no personality. All of the personality you're living through now is adopted, which is how we can come and change our adopted personality and change our skill sets. It's very malleable, it's easy to change, and it's held in place by a desire to do this. And by the way, I had a message that I need to add into this. So I know it doesn't fit into the flow of conversation, but I'm told to do it now. And that is, when you're listening to shows like this, there'll be the odd character like David giving these conversations. He seems special because he can do these skills. But David's here to teach many other people. And one of the visions David was given was that of looking at a whole room full of people working on Skype connections, linking all over the world, training other people how to get their astral projections up to speed. And anyone who wants to learn these skills now has the potential to not only learn the skills, but become a teacher of it. Because if you become a teacher, those guiding spirits and alien beings will be taking you on endless trips. You will be visiting all the corners of the universe if you become a teacher of this subject. And that's what happened to David. He learned to teach it, and as a result, he was taken on endless journeys way beyond what would have happened if he'd just been dabbling around in his study or his bedroom. If you learn to be a teacher, you are going to be taken across the universe and find all your own friends. And there's a big, powerful message for people to realize they can do that. Get the speed up, train others. You are going to be taken on amazing adventures. I mean, how do you feel about things like that, James?
Oh, brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And we want to promote that. We want to promote awakening. We want to promote enlightening. And then once we understand it and once we fully embrace it, teach others. And just let it go out like a ripple in a pond. Spread the word.
Yes. So what more questions have you got left there on your notes sheet?
Well, I wish I had a note sheet. Because I don't, because like I say, it's very organic. It just kind of goes where my brain wants to go. I've asked you, what do you think is the future? Have you been given a glimpse into the next 20 years?
Well, the immediate future seems to be an amazing period of divergence. It's like many possibilities. But if we go out a bit further, about 250 years hence, there's a wonderful future college that we've worked with many times. And what we saw was like a college of psychic studies where all the kids would not only learn maths and English and art and history, but they'd learn astral projection skills and all of these spiritual skills would be very natural. Some of their teachers were more ghosts than physical people. And these kids were given exercises to go and learn about astral skills in the primitive world. And they'd often spend time linking back to us. So I've spent many a session working with teenagers who seem to know a lot more about spiritual skills and astral projection than I did. And they were showing us techniques and helping come into our bodies so they could experience what the primitive world was like and then have fun with it to get it more interactive and show us how to make the human energy system function better. So I've seen an enormous amount of that kind of future. But as to the patch in the middle, it seemed very uncertain. It's like we don't know how we get there, but there are these landmarks we will somehow be brought to. So we're experiencing a sort of divergence of different possibilities, and then later on there'll be a convergence to bring everything back towards evolutionary targets and objectives. So that's my take on the future, if that helps your question.
It does, and it kind of leaves space for that figurative kick in the butt where something is going to happen that is going to bring us all together. A little bit earth-shattering, let's say, but negative for some, but at the end of the day, extremely positive for everyone.
Yes.
Because that could fit in the middle.
We're living in a very exciting time where we've been given the means to destroy ourselves. We've missed a couple of nuclear wars. There have been some very close shaves on that, where literally one guy has stood up and said no, and I could have a whole different show on that, but it's happened several times now. We've nearly blown ourselves away. But yet we've got through, and we've been given the opportunity to have all this technology and use it for a common good. And it's like children being given wonderful machines that they have to learn how to play with. And we're a bit childlike in this world and coming into adolescence now. So it's a great environment. We're all growing up in these human forms, and it's really wonderful.
And it's about time we grew up. Now, the two books that you have out right now, The Real Alien Worlds, is that where the dictionary or the encyclopedia is?
Well, we've got The Real Alien Worlds, which is showing you how other beings lived, and it's a communications tool. If you read it gently and slowly, you'll find you start to get a connection with them, and particularly if you're in a meditative state, it's like it's opening up a two-way portal. So just read that book slowly, and you'll find yourself drawn into those worlds. So that's helping show you about astral connections. And then the Great Simulator book, and there's another part of it coming out very soon, and working on it at the moment, is just talking through the techniques and the skills that make all of this easier to do. So we've got those two books out there. You can download the beginnings of both of them on the Great Simulator website. That's GreatSimulator.com. If you go on that website, you can get downloads of the books and see what it's like, get your own taster. So those are the two directions we're taking, what you can do and how it's done.
Perfect. And of course, if you are in the Spaced Out Radio Space Traveler chat room, we've posted links on how to sign up for the Great Simulator website, and David and his team's website, also in our chat room on Spreaker. And I'd like to thank you. This was absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much for dropping by tonight, David. Or this morning.
This morning. Well, thank you for being civilized enough to do it in the morning time, because I would find doing this in the middle of the night very tiring, like getting jet lag.
So while you are off to start your day, I'm going to get ready for bed.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you, David. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight in the chat room, and my 144,000 light workers that drop by. You're brilliant. Good night, everybody.
This is our last goodbye. Young hearts will stop. Torn souls set free. All that we have is now. If this is what you want, then come to me.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? They sing and they go. What are those voices? Look up for the mountains. Because somebody hide, somebody better hide on through the hill, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. We are after you, dead or alive. We are out to get you, dead or alive. And forget yourself. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done. Throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after now. On through the hill, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. Dead or alive, we are out to get you, dead